everyone, this is Jody back again with our Instapot Beginner Series. Today I'm just going to give you a few quick tips on how to use the Instapot for freezer meals. Last post that we did, we talked about the Instapot with meal prepping, and we talked about how my husband and I will create some meals that we can put in the refrigerator to grab and go, such as salads, things like that, or even just almost like the old TV trays, but not frozen. They're just ready to go. We do that often, but another tip that we use as a busy family is to make freezer meals. And some of you may have already attempted to do freezer meals. I loved freezer meals even before I got my Instapot, but the problem was, if you know me very well, I'm often very forgetful. I'm just gonna be here right now. I am often very forgetful, and so I would have freezer meals, and then when I come home ready to cook the freezer meal, I would have forgotten to defrost the freezer meal, and therefore we were stuck without dinner. So in the past, I would always have all these freezer meals, and I couldn't cook them because they weren't defrosted. Either you have to put them in a slow cooker in the beginning of the day, or they have to be defrosted in order to put them in your oven, and I would always forget to defrost them. So I ran across a blog one time that talked about freezer cooking in the Instapot. And so you can take your freezer meal and put it directly into your Instapot without defrosting, which was a game changer for me because therefore, if I forgot to defrost, it wasn't a big deal. So before we dive into the exact how to do it, let's talk about some tips. In the past, when I did freezer meals, I would do Ziploc bags, the big gallon size. I planned on having one for demonstration purposes. Again, my forgetful mind, I'm out. So picture the big gallon size Ziploc freezer meal bags, right? The zippy bags. And so I would normally put all of my stuff in there, Ziploc those up, and put it in the freezer. Those would be flat, which were fantastic for my freezer. I would freeze them and then I would line them up vertically to save space in my freezer. Problem is, I had a rectangle, and trying to fit that big gallon-sized rectangle down into the Instapot did not work very well. It didn't go in at all. So I have learned that one of the first tips on freezer meals for the Instapot is you need to have a round bowl. I typically use this size if it's a family size. Sometimes we will do this size for if it's like an individual serving of something and we're just going to reheat it real quick. I'll use this size. So how do you fill this? You can put your food directly into this bowl, put the lid on it, and put it in your freezer. That's pretty simple. Some people don't have enough bowls, or maybe you're going to gift this freezer meal to a new mom or someone sick or something like that. And so you don't want to necessarily give them this container. And so you might want to do a Ziploc bag in order to take it to them instead. So you can put a Ziploc bag in here to fill. So for instance, as I said, I'm out of my big one. So just picture this small one as a bigger bowl. But what I would do is put a Ziploc bag inside of the bowl and cover over the edges, and then I fill it. And once I am done, I just roll this over. Easier said than done. So then I just unwrap the Ziploc bag from the big one, and I zip it up. I leave it in the bowl until it's frozen, because if you take it out, again, it's going to go flat. So keep it in the bowl and put it in the freezer until it's frozen. Then you can take it out of the container and you have your Ziploc bag and you can save your container. Again, I use gallon size. I just don't have them for demonstration purposes. But typically what I do, we just went out and bought a ton of these round bowls, and I just put them straight in here and we freeze them. So what our meal planning for freezer plan is, we throw our meat directly into the bowl or Ziploc bag, depending upon how you want to do it. If you're going to put meat in, do not defrost. If you're using like frozen meat, don't defrost your meat, put your meat directly in here, frozen or thawed, no matter how it is. You do not want to take, side note, you don't want to take frozen meat and defrost it and then refreeze it. So if you already have frozen meat, just put it in here. Typically we buy like the frozen chicken. Just throw your frozen chicken straight in here. Add in what other vegetables or whatever you want to put in here. Put the lid on. Don't forget to date it and put the contents in. I say that because I have a whole thing of freezer of soup that I created. Thankfully, I know what it is, but I wrote with a dry erase marker what it was, and it wiped off. And so don't use a dry erase marker to wipe on here. If you're using a Ziploc bag, you can use a Sharpie or a pen, not a big deal. You can just write on that. If you use a container like this, I ran across the recommendation of using a grease pen. So I am off to get a grease pen today so I can mark my containers correctly. But once you put this, you freeze it. Now that you know how to make the freezer meal, how do you cook it in the Instapot? Very simple. All you have to do is take your container out of the freezer, and it's hard, like it's going to be frozen in here, right? So you can't just dump it in. So all you have to do, run it underneath some hot water, loosen it up a little bit, open this up, and then just dump it in. It'll be like a solid sheet of ice, which is not a big deal. So once you get the ice block inside, you're going to hit saute. You're going to leave it on there for about 5 minutes. This is going to help defrost your meal a little bit, so that way you're getting liquid in here, because you've always been taught not to cook with less than a cup of liquid inside your Instapot. So you want to make sure that you hit saute for a few moments, help get some liquid in there. Side note again, do not put your lid on when you are in saute mode. It will shut down your pot because it's not safe and doesn't have enough liquid, so it will shut it down. So keep your lid off, saute it for about 5 minutes until you start having some liquid, and then you could put your lid on and then finish cooking as directed. Just remember, if you are taking, for instance, if you're just going to do chicken, normal chicken, if I had thawed chicken and I put it in here, it's going to be about 15 minutes that I would cook my thawed chicken on. If it's frozen, it's going to take it longer to come to pressure, so you're going to need to up the time. So typically if I have frozen chicken, I'm going to put that in for 25 minutes instead of 15. If you find a freezer cooking meal, it's probably already adjusted for you, but if you're trying to take a meal that you're not following a recipe, you might want to adjust that time accordingly. If you throw a meal in and you go to open it up and it's still not all the way done, we've done this a couple of times when we've tried to do our own recipes and not followed somebody else's. If you get in and your chicken's not done or whatever, it's okay to go ahead and close the lid, lock it back up, and reset it for a few more minutes. Typically we'll add another 5, depending on how bad it is, maybe another 5-10 minutes. Let it continue to cook, and then it will be fine. So again, recap, it's very simple. Freezer cooking is almost exactly how you would on, the oven, but the biggest tip is to use a circular round container to put your meat in, or to put your food in to freeze. Don't use the gallon size Ziplocs, or you're gonna have trouble fitting it all in here. It's not fun. I've tried it. And then you're just going to hit saute before. Those are the 2 biggest tips that I would have for that. I'm going to be posting our blog. You can check it out. There's some recipes on there. I love to follow once a month cooking, once a month meals cooking. And so I will have some of her recipes on, and I will also start posting some of our favorite freezer meals. We use this, we will stock our fridge that way, or our freezer, so throughout the month if we need dinner and we don't have anything, I can go out and grab something, throw it in, and dinner can be ready in like 30 minutes. So I hope that was helpful, and we will see you next time.